In this episode, I am speaking with Solène Oudet from Blissen.io, and she runs the Kickstart Your Business at 50 Plus bootcamp. I learned about what Solène was doing from Vicki Soll, who is a former community member and was on the podcast in episode 260. Vicki is now one of Solène's instructional designers and instructors. Cue the music.
Welcome to the Repurpose Your Career podcast, brought to you by Career Pivot. This podcast is where those of us in the second half of life come together to discuss how to repurpose our careers for the 21st century. Come listen to career experts give you proven strategies. Listen to people like you tell their stories on how they repurpose their careers. And finally, get your questions answered. Your host, Mark Miller, has made 6 career pivots over the last 30 years. He understands this is not about jumping out of the frying pan into a fire, but rather to create a plan where you make clear, actionable steps or pivots to a better future career. Are you ready to repurpose your career?
Welcome to episode 310 of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. My name is Mark Miller, and I'll be your host every Monday for a discussion on what it's like to repurpose your career. In this episode, I am speaking with Solène Oudet from Blissen.io, and she runs the Kickstart Your Business at 50 Plus bootcamp. I learned about what Solène was doing from Vicki Soll, who is a former community member and was on the podcast in episode 260. Vicki is now one of Solène's instructional designers and instructors. Solène is one of the several people I've found that are running entrepreneurial bootcamps for the 50 plus audience around the U.S. As you will hear, some of these are coaching or consulting businesses, others are brick and mortar restaurants, others are building online marketplaces, and a lot more. Solène is a fascinating person with a fascinating background. Let me read you her bio. Solène is the founder of Blissen, a social enterprise on a mission to help older adults, 50 plus, especially women and people of color, find economic independence and purpose through entrepreneurship. Their flagship program, Kickstart Your Business at 50 plus, is a 10-week cohort-based training program that guides participants through the steps of launching a viable business. Currently funded by the San Francisco Office of Economic and Workplace Development, their program helped 67 older adults launch their own small business last year. Before Blissen, Solène worked for 8+ years in the tech industry as a product manager at Google and co-founder of a B2B startup backed by the Y Combinator. She recently decided to make a career change to tackle a societal challenge she deeply cares about: financial insecurity and social isolation among older adults. I think you'll find that Solène has a heart of gold and is working to make the world a better place. However, before we get to the episode, let's have a word from our sponsor, Career Pivot. The Career Pivot membership community is a group of people from all over the U.S. and Canada. This is a community where everyone is there to help everyone else out, figure out what they want to do in the second half of life, and then make it happen. Many have made changes that they did not know existed or was possible before they came to the community. They learned from each other and broadened their horizons on what was really possible. Let's hear what John had to say about being part of the community.
I would say that for me, coming from a different continent, moving to America last fall, it provided me with invaluable insight into a new world, into a different way of thinking about business, into a different culture. By speaking to my fellow members, I picked up a lot, which otherwise I would never have picked up. I also benefited from advice, very practical, useful information from people working in different fields and with different experiences and at different points in their careers and in their personal journeys. Invaluable advice, which if I hadn't had, I would still be very much far behind. Another thing which I truly enjoy is the sense of community. Without the group and without the membership, I would basically be more or less on my own. Find that the group, that belonging to the group, provides me with a great deal of motivation. Because if I didn't have the group, I wouldn't be motivated to consciously and subconsciously to confront the daily issues that I face and move forward. Sometimes progress is almost imperceptible, but the weekly meetings especially are extremely useful to force you to think about where you are and where you want to go.
I'm recruiting new members. If you are interested in learning more about the endeavor, please go to careerpivot.com/community. Now, on to my discussion with Solène Oudet. Welcome to the Repurpose Your Career podcast. I have the real joy of having Solène Oudet, who is with Blissen. But more importantly, she runs a bootcamp called Kickstart Your Business at 50 plus. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
How did this bootcamp come to be?
So during the pandemic, a lot of older adults were displaced by the pandemic and were significantly impacted. And so I had the opportunity to partner with a local nonprofit based in San Francisco, SF Tech Council, and receive a grant from the city of San Francisco to support low-income San Francisco residents who were negatively impacted by the pandemic. And so the idea is that because older adults tend to face a lot of discrimination when it comes to find a job, and many face long gaps in employment, more and more older adults decide to start their own small business. And the idea is really to, with this bootcamp, is to support those older adults who are willing to find more financial security by becoming their own boss.
So you got a grant.
Mm-hmm.
So who is eligible for this bootcamp?
Yeah, so we want to support as many people as possible. So to be eligible right now, it's only available in San Francisco. So you have to be a San Francisco resident or have a business located in San Francisco. You have to be under the age of 50, and you have to have a good idea of the products or services that you want to provide. So we have about 20 to 25 participants in each cohort, and we have people from all phases in their journey. So typically we have about half of our participants who just come in with an idea for a product or service, and the other half already started selling their products or services, sometimes for several years. But what they're looking for is kind of a framework to make it more like a viable business.
This is limited to San Francisco. How does this run? Is this in person, online? How often do you meet? What's the structure?
So we started in the middle of the pandemic. So our program is mostly online, but now we're becoming more hybrid. So it's because we understand that people love to meet each other in person, and I do believe this is a fundamental aspect of developing really meaningful connections. So it's a very hands-on program. It's 10 weeks. We have 3 interactive group sessions every week of 2 hours each. And so we have 3 main pillars in our curriculum. So we have one strong focus on digital literacy skills. So what are like the main online tools that you can use as a small business owner to run your business? Then we have the entrepreneurial know-how of how to create a business plan, how to create a sales and marketing plan. And then we have the mindset shift needed to become an entrepreneur. So how to overcome fears, how to develop a growth mindset, how to get out there on social media. So we have those 3 sessions every week. Then we also form small peer support groups. So those are like groups of 3-4 people to meet outside the classes every week to provide additional accountability support. And then at the end of the program, people have to submit 3 assignments. So their one-page business plan, their marketing plan, and their financial projections. And they also have to give a short presentation of their business during demo day in front of a panel of judges. And so for people who complete the program, they actually receive some small mini grant to help cover their starting costs. And we have additional awards during demo day.
So basically you do a pitch day at the end.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, those are always, having lived in the tech sector in Austin, I attended many pitch competitions.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, to go back to your initial question about is it online or in person? So the sessions are online, but because all of our participants live relatively close to each other, a lot of them meet in person during the week. And we also organize in-person networking events. So across all cohorts, we invite everyone for like a happy hour kind of event for people to mingle in person as well.
So what kind of businesses are people forming? Online, brick and mortar?
So what's interesting is that we see a bit of everything. We do have a majority of service-based businesses. So people starting consulting or coaching businesses. So like someone becoming a parenting coach, a life coach, someone providing tutoring services, someone starting a daycare service, someone starting cleaning services. And then we also have some people starting cafes or restaurants, or people selling food products like granola. And then we also have people in retail making their own jewelry or like their own clothes and bags and selling those online, but also in person at, fair markets, for instance.
Of your past clientele or your past cohorts, what type of businesses tend to be the most, people tend to get off the ground the fastest or the most successful?
I think it's hard to say because people come at different phases, but of course, I think businesses that can be started immediately without any need for external financial support tend to do very well. So if you're like selling services or even a food product, you can just start communicating to your audience, go to a fair market and start selling immediately. So those tend to go very well. And we have a lot of our participants who find their first customers during the program, or that just, they had a few customers in the past. And now at the end of the program, they've had, 45 customers. So we do see people, I think the value that we provide is the accountability system. So because it's 10 weeks, it's fast paced, people build a lot of momentum. And also because it's cohort based, there's a lot of bravery that comes from being part of a cohort, and people tend to really go outside their comfort zones and try new things. And by trying those new things, they experience a lot of success.
So what do you think is the biggest challenge you've seen with people? Is it going from a fixed to a growth mindset? Is it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think oftentimes it's a matter of self-confidence and believing that you're an entrepreneur yourself and that you can charge for your services or products. Like we've had participants who did not feel confident asking for money in exchange for their services. And so it's really like giving them permission to think of themselves as entrepreneur and taking small steps. And so I think it's not about starting your business in a perfect way. It's about taking one step this week that, brings you to the next step, and, being willing to take risks and make mistakes. And that's, part of being an entrepreneur, and that's okay. You're going to fail, but, then you're going to succeed. And, really being able to overcome those mental blocks and, try new things, I think is usually like a key challenge and a key things that we really try to teach our participants to overcome.
The fear of failure, I'm sure, is I just had a class example today. My wife and I are getting our Mexican driver's licenses, and we had to go through a parallel parking test.
Oh, fun.
In a relatively new car to us. And I did it on my first try. My wife had to come back, and she was all nervous because she thought she might fail again. She failed the first time. And for me, it's, okay, I fail. What are the ramifications? I come back next week. I do it again. So what?
Yes. Yeah, I think, overcoming this imposter syndrome can be really hard. And that's where being part of a supportive community in a similar phase in their lives really help, because it's something to see like a 20-year-old create a video on TikTok. It's something else to see, someone your age, doing something like that. And then you believe, oh, that person did it and that person is just like me. Okay, let me try it out myself.
Yeah, there's no question, because I run my own online community, and you're one of your employees, Vicki Soll, who used to be a member of my community. One of the things that she got out of being in our community was the fact of seeing other people doing things. And if they can do it, that's very reassuring. And that's the value of a cohort system.
Exactly. It's very powerful.
Do you get involved with helping people learning how to sell?
I'm not an instructor myself, but we do have an amazing team of coaches who tend to mirror the people we serve, and who oftentimes are small business owners themselves who come and teach the different parts of the curriculum.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges is, I find with many people of this age, and they say, well, I have to go sell. And they don't realize that selling is solving your customer's problem.
Right.
It's not trying to get them to spend money on something they don't need.
Yeah, I think, finding what resonates with your customers. So first, trying to connect on a human level and trying to understand what are their challenges and needs and how you can support them, versus just trying to sell on the get-go is not going to get you anywhere. So it's really understand your target customers, what they need, and how you can support them.
So do you have some examples of some past clientele?
Yeah, I think we've had so many. I think we've had Christine, who I think she has a very inspiring story, because she had to stop working to care for her kids with disability. And then she tried to re-enter the workforce, and she had this big gap in employment. And so she was not attractive to employers. So she decided to become a life coach and get her certification. And during the program, she really got out there and, ended the program with, I think, like 40 customers, which was amazing. Then we've had like someone who has an Ethiopian restaurant. She used to rely on her kids to do the social media marketing. And during the program, she, learned how to do it herself. And now she's, being active on social media, creating her own post. And that really helped also expand her reach. And then we had, participants offering online Qigong classes, who during the program decided to organize her first in-person retreat and got a lot of signups for it. So yeah, we've had like a lot of really amazing stories. And I think what I'm also very excited about is that being an entrepreneur is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so a lot of our participants they're solopreneurs. They don't have a lot of friends doing something similar. So really what we're trying to provide is a sense of belonging and community. And so people form meaningful relationships that last after the program. So a lot of our participants continue to meet in small peer support groups on a regular basis to, stay motivated and accountable and support each other. And I think for me, this is really maybe like the key value of the program is really to help people build this support system.
It's incredibly valuable to have people to bounce ideas off of. I mean, I've been in business now for 10 plus years, and I've gone through various zigs and zags because the world changes.
Mm-hmm.
And social media is a classic example. Once you think you have it figured out, it'll change.
Definitely, yes. And I think, in terms of also the impact that we had is that for a lot of those small business owners, sometimes getting access to capital can be a challenge. And so I think, we provide mini grants, but in addition to that, because we're a training program funded by the city, we were also able to refer many of our participants to small business grants funded by the city. And so we've had 13 participants who received a $5,000 grant to help cover with their, marketing costs. And I think that makes a big difference for someone just getting started.
So where do you see this going? Where do you want to be in 5 years or better yet? Where do you want to be in a year or 2 years? Because no one knows what the heck 5 years is going to look like.
Big vision. I think, the people over 50, they account for, 57% of all small business owners. They are starting more small businesses than any other age group. But the reality is that there's very few dedicated programs to serve this demographic. And so we do see a huge demand. And so right now we are available in San Francisco. Our goal this year is to expand beyond San Francisco and start offering the program, in the Bay, in other states as well. And also we want to continue building upon the community that we created. So we are offering more alumni events. We want to offer more specific programs on social media, for instance. So kind of wanting to expand the programming and also expand beyond San Francisco.
There's nothing unique about San Francisco with the issues you have there versus Austin, Texas, Houston, New York.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. So it's more about forming the right partnerships to make this program possible elsewhere.
When someone finishes the program, what do you expect from them?
So I think for me, I hope that they stay engaged in the community, and I wish them, great success. And so I think things that they can do is to give back by becoming a mentor to our current participants, or also come to some of our speaker events and, facilitate their own workshop and share their expertise. So I think our participants have so much to teach each other that we're really trying to encourage them to share their experience and expertise with others so that everyone can benefit from it.
So if someone wanted to participate in your program or learn more about your program, how might they do that?
Of course, they can go to our website, Blissen, Blissen.io, and then they can find more information and fill out the application form.
Well, Solène, thank you very much for being on the Repurpose Your Career podcast.
Thanks, Mark, for having me. My pleasure.
I hope you were inspired by that conversation. I hope to have some of the participants in our program on the podcast. I'm also reaching out to other entrepreneurial bootcamp administrators to get them on the podcast. If you know of a program, please email me at podcast@careerpivot.com and tell me about the program. Take a moment, go to careerpivot.com, sign up for the weekly Career Pivot Insights newsletter, which is sent out every Sunday. You'll get a weekly update on this podcast, white papers, and new blog posts. When you subscribe, you'll receive my latest white paper, Ageism, the Last Acceptable Bias. While there, do not forget to check out the Career Pivot community. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Look for Career Pivot on Facebook and LinkedIn. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. You will find all the show notes at careerpivot.com/episode-310. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podbeam, Overcast, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and lots of other places where podcasts can be found. In fact, this podcast can be found on the Repurpose Your Career podcast channel on YouTube. Hope to see you next Monday for another episode of Repurpose Your Career podcast.